Right. All right. Welcome into another episode of Conscious Conversations. I'm your host, Nitin Garg, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Nick Palladino King.
Hey.
And today we have the pleasure of having on the show Justin Roethlingshoefer. And Justin is the co-founder of Own It Coaching, and he's also a TEDx speaker. He's the host of Sports Science and Recovery podcast and the Own It show. Justin, you're the author of multiple Amazon best-selling books, including A Practical Approach to Applied Sports Science for Athletic Development and Own It. You've created an app experience called Own It, which provides personalized insights and helps people own their habits to improve recovery, health, and performance. And I love this quote by you, Justin, which is, performance is realized when health is optimized, and that we cannot separate physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health, something that both Nick and I are very, very passionate about. So with a big open arms and open heart, welcome to the show, Justin. It's great to have you.
Oh, it's so great to be here, guys. And I'm just excited to be able to hopefully give the audience something to think about, have some paradigm shifts, some perspective changes, so that we can ultimately live differently and realize different results, which is ultimately what we're called to.
Awesome. We're looking forward to diving into that. Justin, would you lead us through a brief opening grounding with the audience, and then let's dive into all conversations around health and optimization.
Yeah, so I'm a big breathwork guy. So again, if people are familiar with Wim Hof breathing or the Wim Hof breathwork, we're just going to go through 10 double inhale breaths. So an inhale through the stomach, inhale through the chest, and then a loud audible exhale for 10. And then we're just going to give a little hold for about 30 seconds and just allow us, and I'll talk you guys through something. So I'll guide you here on an inhale, exhale, 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 inhale all the way in nice and deep and hold at the top. And just allow yourself just to sit into this feeling. You might be fighting that breath hold. Just try to let everything kind of relax. And I want you to go to a space in your mind, and I want you to see this sky. And there's clouds to the left, there's clouds to the right. It's almost like storm clouds. And as they come together, they billow together, but nothing really happens. And then all of a sudden they separate, and the clouds leave behind one big word in the sky. What word is there for you? What does that word look like? What does that word sound like? How does that word move you? How does that word shape you? And I want you to say that word out loud. Wherever you are, say that word out loud. Say that word out loud. And as you say that word out loud, I want you to start going back to your breath and just slowly starting to breathe. A normal cadence. And every time you exhale, I want you to say that word again. I want you to say that word again. I want it to just have an imprint on your heart. I want it to have an imprint on your mind. And I want it to have an imprint on your reality. And so as we stay in this position, as we stay where we are, I want you to say it one more time. Say that word out loud, nice and loud. Take ownership of that word. And wherever you are, if you have your eyes closed, open them up and step forth knowing that you're going to take action or lean into or activate that word in your life to realize something different as we dive into this conversation.
Thank you.
Oh, that was great.
Nick, what was your word?
Joy.
Love that.
Really
Nitin, what was your word?
Mine was go.
Go. That's good. I love it. Yeah. We're ready. Let's go.
Go. I'm juiced. Wim Hof breath got me going.
Yeah, that was something, actually. The double inhale and exhale, doing that. The first couple, it was a bit of a buildup, but by the fifth or sixth, you could realize this sort of surge of energy
Yes.
And especially as you had us hold the breath, it was like, yeah, at first it was a little bit much. But then as you try to relax into it, there's a dissipating effect while still holding on to a lot of that high energy.
Yep. So good.
Cool.
So Justin, really curious, sort of, there's a lot of conversations that you have around health, recovery, optimization. I was just telling Nick, actually, I'm coming off of a big weekend with the kids out in Disneyland, one day walking 25,000 steps, lots of movement, and then feeling tons of fatigue overnight. Next day, we have a huge drive back, so barely walking 1,000 steps. It's just kind of the reality of life. There's these big upswings and downswings. And I almost want to start there as a metaphor to say, I'm sure you deal with this dynamic with your clients. What are some ways in which you like to be able to frame this conversation? How do you look at this big topic of health and fitness, knowing that people's lives always have these up currents and down currents?
I'm trying to think about where to start, and I'm going to throw a question back at you. If I was to say the word health, what words or phrases come to your mind? Throw them out there.
Energy, well-being,
happiness.
Awesome.
It's
Now,
like
when
a sense of vitality.
Awesome. I've asked this question to probably 250,000 people over the course of the last 3 years. I get the same answers. I get strength. I get mental clarity. I get quality sleep. I get a lot of energy, a lot of vibrance, those types of things. Now, if I shift the question and I say, what word or phrase comes to your mind when I say performance? Now, what word or phrase comes to mind?
Drive.
Presence, drive. Awesome. What else?
It's like clarity, focused, intensity.
Awesome.
Yeah. Intensity.
I often get winning. I get attaining a goal. I get efficiency. And so when we think about these words, these are what we want. These are what we are aspiring to. These are what we're moving towards. And going back to your question, Nitin, is like, how do you deal with the ups and downs? Is so often we think that when we go through ups and downs, we're not going to get to where we want to go. And every single word that you just told me, the world has told us that's what health is. That's what performance is. But you know what all those words have in common? They're all outcomes. They're all results. And health and performance is not a result. It's a journey. It's a journey. It's a process. It's a system. It's an experience. And so what we have to realize is that we live in a world of inevitability. It's inevitable we're going to get an outcome. And that outcome is either going to be closer to or further away from what we desire, from what we want, based upon our intentional, our consistent habits and behaviors. Are we developing them to be intentional? Are we developing them to be consistent? Are we willing to be patient over the course of time and to be obedient to those who are guiding us to get to where we want to go as an outcome? There is no perfection in this journey. There is no one way to do things. There is no one way that health looks. For one person, it's completely different than the other. There's no one way that performance looks. There's only results based upon our processes, our systems that we've intentionally and consistently built.
Yeah, it reminds me of this quote actually I read recently from Paramahansa Yogananda. I follow this sort of daily quote by him, and one of them was, the quality of your life is not the passing inspirational thoughts, but the daily habits and grooves that we build up, those daily habits that we build our life upon. And it really resonated because I was, in the days when I used to look to everyone else for leadership and strength, and always saw folks outside of myself as being, having attained it, there was the sense of, man, is that ever going to, is my life ever going to change? And in those days, all you could do was, at least for myself, was the daily habits, right? Whether it was the exercise, the eating right, the cultivating positive thoughts. And now, when I'm much, much farther along in that journey, those daily habits are still what sticks. Nick and I were just briefly talking and saying, man, with a full family, 2 kids, heavy schedules, how do we find rest and relaxation? And I was saying, man, I'm so lucky that I have that morning meditation routine
Yeah.
because that's often the only time when that happens. The rest of the day is, quite frankly, a lot of go.
Here's the unique part of what you're saying, and I get this a lot from people, is they say, well, Justin, I have 4 kids, a dog, and a business that I'm trying to run. I have a mom who is not well that I'm having to care for. How do I do these things? And I'm going to go to the level of even where I've had people say, well, Justin, I'm in a wheelchair. How can I do a lot of these things? Or Justin, I have ADD and a lot of mental issues. How do I do these things? And how we often see these is we see them as excuses. We see them as obstacles. We see them as roadblocks as to why we can't do something. Where instead, you don't become intentional with your habits in spite of these circumstances. You become intentional because you're in these circumstances. It's because you have 4 kids and a business that you have to be intentional. It's because you're in a wheelchair, you have to be more intentional. It's because you have ADD that you have to become more intentional. And when you step into that and you live differently, that's when life starts to change. That's when life starts to operate. People look at me oftentimes when I'm speaking on stage or when I'm doing podcasts like this, and they say, "Oh, well, you got it all figured out. You've got it easy. You've nailed it. You've mastered it. You've got the life that you've ultimately done because you've just got something that I don't. I'm no better than you. I'm no smarter than you. I have no more resources than you do. I have no less difficulties in life than you do. I've just made a choice to be more consistent than you and more intentional than you." And when we lean in this way, when we think about it this way, is I was the fat kid. I was the anorexic kid. I was the depressed kid. I was the drug addicted kid. I was the guy that was so unconfident with myself that I had to overcompensate in every way, shape, and form. I was the guy that was living a life that was constantly stressing me out, that was constantly in this chronic state of fight or flight, that ultimately found that they had 4 precancerous polyps in my colon and a precancerous ulcer in my stomach that almost cost me my life by the age of 35. I've been that person. I've been in those shoes. I've been where you are. I have ADD. I have these things. I'm no different than anybody else. But what I've done is I've built systems in my life to counteract that. I'll give you a perfect example. Somebody says, "Justin, you are so inspiring the way that you're like, you work out every single day. You've got these frameworks around you that are able to operate. You are so disciplined." And I said to them, "I'm no more disciplined than you." And they said, "Yes, you are. I can never wake up and do a workout every single day." I said, "There's probably 90% of the days that I wake up and I don't want to go work out. There's days that I don't want to go and get into the gym. There's days that I just, you know what, I'd rather sleep in. But you know what I've done is I've built systems around me to make sure that that doesn't happen. So what I've done is I've invited 5 men to show up at my house every day at 6 a.m. that I lead in a workout in my backyard, that I take into the sauna, that I take into the cold plunge, that I take over to the track and run sprints, that I take to the hill and go do sled pushes, because I'm no longer accountable to me. I'm accountable to those 5 men. And so that creates discipline in spite of everything that I have to overcome, in spite of my inabilities, in spite of my imperfections, in spite of my downfalls, in spite of my character flaws, because I don't rise to the level of my goals of what I want to do. I fall to the level of the systems in which I implement in my life. And I just create intentional and purposeful systems that allow the outcomes to be inevitable over the course of time.
Yeah, and man, that's just so on point. And I own a gym in San Francisco, and these are the conversations I have almost every single day. And it's like, do you move your body intentionally 3 times a week minimum? Do you eat better more often than not? Do you make these things happen? And there's a quote that I love, and it sounds, Justin, like you're in the space too, is you have to create health, or you have to make your health happen. And our world is not set up for us to be healthy. Actually, our modern world is really set up for the opposite. So it takes effort and intention and presence and consistency to create our health. And I want to acknowledge, like, it's not necessarily easy to do that. But there's ways you can make it happen. So Justin, I'd love to know for you, what's your take on making it happen? And also, what are these systems? What are these frameworks that someone listening who's not doing anything right now can be like, okay, I can take one thing from this talk and I can start doing that today.
Yeah. So it's so good. Like, I love how you said that. From stage, often something that that I say in all of my talks is you either earn your health or you earn your illness. It's your choice. And the culmination of your habits and behaviors create your inevitable outcome, or the choices you make today are simply a vote of who you want to become tomorrow. And when you think about this, I always go back to, because people have a vision of who they want to become. They have a vision of this version of them that's elevated, that's different. And I often ask, what habits would that version of you have? What habits would that version of you have? And they sit there and they say, well, they would do this, they would do this, they would do this, they would do this. They get up at this time, they'd work out at this time, they'd create intentional space for them to have a moment for them to relax before they went into the chaos that is their home. And at the end of it, they go, man, I don't have any of those right now. And it's, well, no kidding that we're further away from where we actually want to be. And we're actually not on even a train getting to where we want to go because we haven't taken the time and spent the energy or invested the resources in order to get us closer to that. And so I love this conversation because I've got a book coming out on April 23rd called The Power of Ownership: Redeem Your Health, Live Life by Design, and Break the Relentless Pursuit of Normal. And what we do in the first half of the book is really break down, like, what is this concept of normal? Because the world has told us normal is something, but the world's view of normal is actually dysfunctional. And how do we take this dichotomy of what is normal versus what a life of different looks like? What does a life lived differently look like? What does a life lived differently operate like? How does it feel? And what we ultimately hope to aspire to is to be different. And so when we think about this, I go back to kind of your question is, okay, where would somebody start? And the way that we start is we have to start with a first step. And there's really 8 foundational pillars that I talk through that we can take an action step towards giving ourselves greater capacity, giving ourselves a greater level of intentionality. And those 8 pillars are exercise, nutrition, hydration, sleep, immune response, self-care, environment, and mindset. And those 8 areas all have 10 to 15 different habits recommended underneath them. But as you look at them, you don't go into each one of those pillars and say, hey, I'm going to do 3 habits in each pillar. I'm going to come away with 24 new habits. I'm going to start tomorrow. No, we're going to choose one. We're going to choose one pillar. We're going to choose one habit. And this is where we start. And then somebody says to me, well, Justin, how do I establish a habit? Because I've found myself creating a plan. And I've created a plan so many times, and I've gotten into a new routine, but that routine gets disrupted by something. And so what happens is you go back and forth between plan, routine, plan, routine, plan, routine, plan, routine, plan, routine, and it gets exhausting. Well, what happens is there's actually 4 stages to creating a new habit: plan, routine, rhythm, instinct. Plan, routine, rhythm, instinct. And when we think about this conceptually, in how do we actually create longevity within creating a habit and establish something that's permanent, is we have to go back to the psychological component that happens here. And the downside is that it takes time to realize a habit. Meditate for a month, you're still going to have anxiety. Go to the gym for a month, you're still going to be overweight. Eat better for a month, you may not lose all that much weight. Start sleeping better for a month, you're still going to wake up tired. Like, that's where people get frustrated. They're like, I've been doing all the things, but I'm not seeing the results. Well, this is where I go back to data drives direction. Data determines decisions, not feelings, thoughts, and opinions. And I talk about this a lot in the book, and the concept of heart rate variability and being able to allow the measure of heart rate variability is really a deep inside look into how your body is handling and adapting to stress and strain in your life. Mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. The body doesn't know the difference between these forms of stress. And your body has a certain capacity to handle stressors. being in a fight with your spouse, sending your kids off to college, building your business, getting in shape and activating, getting the kids to school, the morning routines, the night routines. These are all stressful things on our body. But if we only have our faucets turned on and we don't have holes poked in this cup to allow it to drain, we're never going to be able to handle what is necessary. And chronic stress creates chronic deficiencies of vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, which creates chronic symptoms. Chronic symptoms, the world has told us, is normal, which ultimately leads to chronic illness. And that's why chronic illness is the leading cause of death in the United States at 71%, and it continues to climb year over year over year. 70% of people have one chronic illness, 42% have two or more. And this is where we have to actually sit into this and go, hey, we're earning our health or earning our illness based upon the decisions that we're leading down this path with. And how can we be more intentional and more consistent with this? Well, it starts with an awareness process, and that awareness process starts with heart rate variability. How is your body adapting to what you're currently doing in your daily routines, your daily habits, your daily choices today that you probably just haven't been aware to?
Man, you're firing me up, bro. You're firing me up. I think it's really refreshing that you're speaking so clearly about this health epidemic that we have here, in the West. It's a real issue. I mean, the people are dying 10, 15, 20 years younger, and their lives are suffering, their families are suffering, their communities are, right? Our schools. I believe doctors are up to saying 90% of disease is preventable. Like 90%. 95? I mean, it was 70 a couple years ago. Now it's 95, and it's like, I bet you it's 99%. Honestly, and the majority of it is what you're saying. It's in your mind, it's in your approach, it's in what you do. I just love that you're speaking so clearly about earning your health or earning your disease, and it can sound a little harsh, but it's simply true. It's just the facts, and I think more people could really benefit from owning that and not being the victim of society and saying, hey, these are the world, this is the world I live in, and within that system, how do I make changes? Can you as we're hearing you talk, and it's like, man, your life's so good and you got everything so great, it's a little off topic, but can you share the story of you setting up a major event in New York and no one coming to your speech? I think this is a really great example of you walking the walk in terms of controlling what you can control. I know it's a little off topic, but I think in terms of people hearing that you're not full of it, and you are really living this, I think that'd be a really cool story to hear.
So as I told kind of like really high level overview of what I did. For 11 years, I was a health and performance director in the National Hockey League, really managing the health, wellness, performance of the best athletes in the world, and was a pioneer in the sporting age, utilizing data to make decisions. Like, how can we create N of one solutions? And that was literally what I did starting in 2009 in the NHL. And in 2019, that's when I got sick. That's when I had a lot of these things happen that I realized, hey, I'm actually not living out the system myself. I'm just under chronic stress that I took on for a decade, created the chronic illness that I was under. And so I created my own illness in myself. And it was my wake up call to say, hey, you know what? I need to do something different. I need to operate differently. And so through this process, I realized that, hey, this isn't an athlete issue. This is a human issue. And it caused me to step out and create my company, Own It. And I tell you that background because during my last year in the NHL, I wrote this book, and it was called Blueprint. And I was like, this is going to be like my coming out party. This is going to be what's going to launch the next portion of my career. This is going to be what everybody needs to hear and listen to and ultimately get access to in order to really create something new. And so my last team I was with Anaheim out in California with the Ducks. And as I left and stepped away, I flew out to where my wife was, which is in New York City. So I move into her apartment, I get all my stuff there, and I'm there for about 3 months. And my book's finally done. It's published. It's ready to go. And I'm going to do a launch party. And so I take out Lululemon headquarters, and I get them to send out an email to their audience. I invite some people that I know in my circles. And I get 42 RSVPs. Yes. I fly in a couple sponsors. I've got my books. I've got food in the back. I've got chairs set up. I even brought in somebody to open for me, like as like an opening keynote that opens up for like the book whole like launch. 7 o'clock on a Saturday night in New York City. Never plan an event for Saturday night, 7 o'clock in New York City. And I go and I sit outside at 6:30, at 6:45, at 7 o'clock, at 7:15. And there's guys, when I say there's nobody, like there's not a soul. There's not a single person who's walked in going, "Hey, Justin, great to see you. So excited for what we're about to do."
This is one of my worst nightmares as a public speaker, by the way, what you're
Oh my
describing.
gosh.
Like, for real.
Still, I was just in Edmonton keynoting an event, and anytime I go to an event that has been put on, it's not put on by another company, because I know if another company goes and they've brought me in, somebody's going to show up. Like that's not on me. I'm just there to show up. But anything that like I put on or anything that I do, I always get this like butt clenching moment about half an hour before the event starts. Is like, man, it's going to take me right back to 2020 in New York City. And so anyways, 7:15 comes, nobody's there. 7:30, nobody's there. I've got the camera crew. I've got this person that I brought in to keynote. I've got the sponsors there, and they're looking at me like I'm an idiot. Like, where is everyone? Like, what are we going to do? And I looked at them. I said, well, I guess it's time to start. And they were like, there's nobody here. I said, we might as well get the content and do it anyways. So I went up there. I delivered my talk just as if it was full. I'm holding back tears the whole time. My stomach is just in knots. I don't know if my butt cheeks unclenched the entire duration I was up there. And I actually put the picture of me speaking on the about section of my website, because that picture looks like I'm talking to people, but there's nobody in there. And as I finished, the camera guy said to me, he said, well, that's a wrap. And I said, there will be a day when this room is full and when I am paid to go and speak in a multitude of areas because this message means something. And he said, good luck, kid. And I just took that to heart. And now, lo and behold, call it 4.5 years later, I've got a book that's chasing the New York Times bestseller list. I'm speaking 200 times a year all over the country and all over the world, actually.
Nice.
And it's a message that means something. It's a message that matters. And so I just knew in that moment, like when you are so convicted on something, circumstances don't matter. When you are so convicted on something, outcomes don't matter, because you will continue to be in the process. I know there's this quote that goes around, like it went viral, and it's, the man who loves to walk will go further than the man who loves the destination. And it's the same thing here. If you fall in love with the process, if you fall in love with what you're doing, if you're so convicted on where you need to go, you're going to get into the position that you need to do if you're willing to do it long enough. And a lot of people talk about the empty mile. Pardon me, I gave the punchline away. Talk about the extra mile. I talk about the empty mile, because everybody starts, but champions finish. And in order to go to where you need to go, you need to be willing to do what others won't. And just staying on it, just staying consistent on the ups and the downs is what is necessary. But it's not enough to just have willpower. It's not enough just to say you need a better mindset. It's not enough just to say, I'm just going to push through. No, you need a system that is intentionally built around what your season of life is, around what your priorities are, about what your unique situation looks like, because you are built unique. Unique created you, different is in you. And you ultimately have to establish a life that's built around that way, that is designed that way. Otherwise, you're just simply accepting failure. And the moment that we realize that, the moment that we know that we can be different, we were built to be different, we have to operate differently, and open our eyes to what real life looks like, that is when everything changes. So many of us are just walking around sleeping. We're literally sleeping in how we operate. We do these habits because somebody else told us to. We start cold plunging because we saw the guy on Instagram do it. We start doing intermittent fasting because we heard our brother-in-law do it. We all of a sudden start going and working out a certain way because we saw the guy on the podcast say it was good. We do a night routine, a morning routine. Well, what does it mean for you? What does Nick's routine mean? What does Nitin's routine mean? Because it's not Justin's routine. I guarantee you that. because you're in a different season of life. You have different needs. You have different requirements. Your body's asking for something different. And the reason that it hasn't worked for you thus far is because you've tried to play somebody else's game. You've tried to do somebody else's work. You've tried to operate in somebody else's plan and somebody else's framework. It's time to open up your eyes. It's time to be awoken. It's trying to see in color so that you can understand what your body's asking for and steward this thing in a way to build capacity to ultimately rise you up and call you out and call you up to what it is that you've been created for, because you've got something that been created for. You've got a calling, you've got a mission, you've got a gifting on your life that is ultimately that's needed in this world for a time exactly such as this. But the selfishness that you've had not to act differently, not to do something unique, not to look into yourself and say, I need to do something different. I need to operate in a different way. I need to build a better system. I need to become more in tune to what my body's asking me and take a stand for that, means that the person that needs your gifting, the miracle that you have for somebody else, you're making them wait. And how can we ultimately step back and say, I need to be different so that I can realize something different and take a step into a life that does not recognize what it is that I'm doing today?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah,
that.
man. Conviction. Jesus. Bring it. Thank you for that. The hair on my arm is standing up right now. And I'm 100% mean that. My whole body's lit. My whole body is lit up. Thank you.
It's just I bring this passion, whether I'm on a podcast, whether I'm talking to a buddy here at the house, or whether I'm on stage in front of 50 or 50,000. It doesn't matter, because I am so convicted on this message, and I know that this is God speaking through me, to be honest with you. This is something that I'm so convicted on. This is something that I dream about. This is something that I think about. It is something that I'm obsessed with, and I have clarity in this that I can't create. I can't manufacture. It's simply it's a download that God just placed in me, that I just know it is my responsibility in order to steward and get this message out in a powerful way. It's why I'm so excited about the book, The Power of Ownership. It's why I'm so excited about the work that we do. It's why I love to get people into our ecosystem, into our business, into our company, because when they step in, they don't leave the same as when they came. You truly see somebody there. Zig Ziglar said something that just stood out to me so heavily, and I was fortunate enough to be around Zig when he was alive, is that Zig actually did a little bit of like an anecdotal study. And he went and looked and asked every single person that he spoke in front of and every single person that went through a program of his. And he said, how many of you have had your lives transformed and truly changed? 94% of people that went through his program said they had a truly life-transforming experience and their lives were different than after than before. 6% of people said that those that saw him speak had a truly transformational experience to where their life was different after than it was before, which led him to say the quote, if you see me speak, you have the opportunity to be inspired. But if you engage in my experiences, if you engage in my programs, you have the opportunity to be transformed. And that is what I just truly feel so deep, because you're going to listen to this and maybe you're going to go through this podcast and you're going to be inspired. You're going to have the hair stand up on your arms. You're going to be like, no, I need to do something different. I need to take action. I need to go. But as soon as this stops playing, you're going to go back into the same routines, the same systems, the same frameworks, the same reality that you came from. And the moment you step back there is the moment that you no longer are able to control the outcome, because you're going to rely on willpower. You're going to rely on circumstance. You're going to rely on this hard mindset that so many people in the personal development space are preaching about. You just got to be harder. You just got to be hard. You just got to push harder. You just got to keep going. You just got to man up. Like, throw that out the window, man. Like the guys that are preaching that, their bodies are breaking down in front of you. How can you actually watch that and think that that's the way in which we have to do things? When are we going to take a stand for doing something different? When are we going to take a stand to do hard things with a community, with people, with a coach, with a guide, with somebody who can help you navigate? Because if all we do is say, I need the plan, getting the plan is like getting the old MapQuest map from the computer and printing it off.
Good old
I still
days.
remember. I'm dating myself now. I'm dating myself. But you know what I'm talking about.
We've all been there.
All right, we're
Yeah,
there, man. We're there.
you
We
type
all
in,
just
hey,
look
you know
younger than
what?
we are.
That's right. That's right. I'm sitting here in Coral Gables. I need to get to Miami Beach. I type in, hey, Coral Gables, where I'm starting. Miami Beach is where I'm going to go. I print this thing off. I sit in my car. And now all of a sudden I go and the 95's backed up. There's an accident on the 95. My exit is closed. All of these things happen. Well, now I'm lost. How do I actually get there? I no longer know how to get there. My efficiency is gone, and I might just give up and come back. And to be honest, even on my way back, I might get lost. I now no longer know where I am. But if you have a guide, if you have somebody who can understand real time what's going on in your life to be a GPS system for you, that all of a sudden they actually warn you, hey, on the upper right, there's a traffic jam. Do you want to get off the exit early so that you can actually send you a back road to get you into some local areas that actually may take longer, but get you there more efficiently and get you there successfully? Is that of interest? Well, yes, of course it is. Well, what would it look like to live a life like that? What would it look like to take action in a different way than you've ever done before? What would it look like to have a guide and an interpreter who's walking hand in hand with you, understanding the life you're in, where you're wanting to go, the mission you're on, the circumstances that you're under, the unique stressors that you're experiencing, the season of life that you're in, and help you navigate that and put together that N of one solution so you can realize a different outcome and get where you're going faster. And that's what we ultimately are missing. That's what we're looking at. I don't want to play Nitin's game. I don't want to play Nick's game. I want to play Justin's game because my unique situation is different than everybody else. And thus, I can't take a generalized solution or a generalized approach to finding that. A unique solution is required for a unique problem. And that is where we need to step in.
And just like, the even what you just said, the way of expression, right? So actually Nick and I are like, we're in 100% agreement with what you just shared, because both of us came from journeys of where a coach or a mentor or teacher helped guide us to our next step and like really experience breakthroughs. At the same time, I feel, people have, like I'm looking at my old self. I'm trying to remember my old self and thinking there was this moment, there was this period of disbelief. And actually, frankly, it still happens from time to time. Whereas there's like, moments of disbelief into, can I rise into my higher self? Can I put myself out there fully? Can I step into my next sort of big decision or career pivot and really go towards what I want to create? And I wonder, as you speak with people, as you work with so many people, do you have a sense of why people may create that sense of disbelief within themselves? Why a lot of us do stay in that sort of asleep mode? And I know there's a sense of safety and all of those things that come. I'm curious, as you've dove into that, what's something you might be able to share?
So it's really unique, the question you ask as to why don't we get out of it? And a lot of times it's because we feel ashamed that we can't figure it out for ourselves. We feel ashamed that we can't figure it out for ourselves. Because here's the thing. And Nick, if you don't understand financial literacy, if you don't understand passive income, if you don't understand investment practices, what do you do?
I mean, depends. So I might just run from it and avoid it and put my head down in the sand, honestly, and just, it'll take care of itself.
For sure. And that's one option. The other option that I see even more often, especially if it's something that's completely out of the realm that we're supposed to understand, is we go and seek help. We go and seek help because you know what? Financial literacy, I've never, I'm not a banker. I shouldn't be expected to understand this. I'm not an investor. I should understand how to do this. So I'm going to go seek maybe some people to help me do this. I'm going to seek a coach. I'm going to seek a guide. I'm going to seek someone in this area. But when we're talking about just life, when we're talking about just health and living, oh my gosh, I should be able to figure out how to wake up every morning and get everything done that I need to do and look after my kids and look after my family and be okay myself. I should be able to figure this out. Yeah. It's really simple. You're not telling me anything new, Justin. You're not saying like, oh my gosh, you have to go and do these things, which is why this health industry, and I get so fired up, guys, when I talk about this, you could probably tell, I'm going to come through the screen.
Yes.
Is the health industry has given us this false hope of, oh, just take this supplement. Oh, just get this 100%. Test done. Oh, just go and get this simple product. Oh, go and get this shot. Go and get this peptide. Go and get this hormone. Go and get this thing. And they've sold it because it's like, oh, no, you can still do it yourself. But we've been given false hope, and we've been given false hope so many times. We've invested in it, maybe. We've dipped our toe in. But the fact that we can't figure it out, the fact that we can't wrap our hands around it, the fact that we can't step into something and do something that feels sustainable and feels like something that we have ownership of, like, man, I'm just not good enough. Man, maybe I'm not built for this. Maybe I'm not equipped for this. Maybe this life wasn't for me. Maybe I wasn't supposed to realize true health. Maybe I wasn't ever supposed to get exposed to this. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be able to have a greater impact, and I'm just supposed to stay here. And so what we do is we stop asking, we stop seeking, we stop looking, and we retreat. We go into our own hole. We go into our own space. We stop getting exposed to others.
Yeah.
And this is why this is why the word different to me is equivalent.
Bury our heads in the sand, like Nick said.
Totally. But bury her head in the sand and just wait for something to happen. This is why the word different to me is like holy to me. Because when you live differently, you're not like everything else. It's uncommon. It gives people an awakening moment to see what is actually possible.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And when you live differently, Nick, when you live differently, your parents, your friends, the people you serve, the people around you, they look up to you and go, man, I can do something different. Nick can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Nitin, when they look at you and how Nitin lives, how he stewards his family, how he leads his family, how he fathers his kids, how he operates as a business leader, a business owner, a podcaster, a business leader. Wow, I can do that too. Same thing when they see me, is you have made a choice to live differently. You're no better. You're no smarter. You're no more resourced. You have no more access to information than everybody else. You've just chosen to do things differently. And oftentimes it's because people haven't been around or seen something different and been inspired to a way in which they're like, I can see myself in them. I can see myself in that person. And I'll tell this story here because for a long time, I asked God, like, why did I have to go through all of this? Why did I have to be the fat kid and got made fun of? Why did I have to be the anorexic kid that was having his liver shut down so much and went from 160 to 95 pounds over the course of a year and was admitted to a hospital? Why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to go through the depression that was so serious that I found myself on the edge of a building ready to end my life at 24 years old? In theoretically, what was the prime of my career stepping into the NHL. Why all of a sudden did I have to go through this near-death experience? Why all of a sudden did I have to go and be diagnosed with ADD and dyslexia and all of these things that made life harder? Why did I have to go through all of that? And the only answer I ever got was because that's what makes you relatable. That's what makes your story accessible to so many people. Why did I have to go through life and get divorced at 26 years old after being married for 4 months, and now all of a sudden being married to a beautiful woman for 8 years? Like, why did I have to go through that journey? Why couldn't it have just been easy? Why couldn't I have just figured it out? Because I had to ultimately go and be somebody that they could relate to. I had to go through the trials, the tribulations. I had to go through the valleys in order to ultimately get back to the top of the mountain and be able to go through that journey and realize that the only thing that differentiates me between me and anybody listening to this that's in a valley is I chose to do something different. I chose to get up. I chose to get up one more time. I chose to seek out something that was unique, something that was uncommon, and that ultimately led to some level of success. I'm no different than anybody else. I'm no better. I'm no more intelligent. I often say, when I sit with John Maxwell, he goes, Justin, you're one step from stupid. And when we think about this, we have to realize that the greatness that you see is not you, but just Jesus through you. It's just you activating your calling, you sitting into what you're called to do. And your failures are not you either. It's just a redirection of where you're supposed to go. But if you don't learn from those, you'll continue to fall into the trap, and you have to do something different. You have to make a different choice. You have to say, hey, it's not me just saying I need to build a different habit. It's how do I actually get intentional and understand what my body needs and learn something new about my body, learn something new about my life, learn something new about the calling I have, learn something new about the journey that I'm on, so that I can finally succeed and make a different decision.
Yeah, and man, what I'm getting from that is there's this quote that I've been loving lately that is, if you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And I've taken it one step further. If you show me your community, I'll show you your future. And there's so much power in what you're saying around getting around other people that have either done it or are doing it. And I'll see at my gym, I'll see people that came in, they're overweight, they're depressed, they have no idea how to take care of their health. And 6 months later, a new member walks in, and this person is putting literally someone under their arm and going, "Come here, Susan, I'll show you how to do it." And I'm like, holy shit, look at the change, the transformation that person made when 6 months ago they had no faith in themselves. And there's so much power in faith and finding people that can do it. And I think as coaches, a large part of what our job is to transfer confidence, to transfer inspiration, to transfer knowledge into someone who they go, okay, Justin showed me this thing or Nitin showed me this thing. I trust them. I like them. It seems like they're doing well. It seems like they're thriving. All right, I'll try it. And then, then it's on them to own it. And it's on us as the coach to step back and be like, if you need me, I'm here, I'll help. But now you got to figure out how to use this thing for yourself. And I love what you said of like, the technique that works for Justin might not work for Nitin. And that's perfect. So then try another one, find a different coach, find a different way of eating, find a different meditation. And then you're really being free to understand what works for you, and not what works for the rest of the population, because what works for the rest of the population actually doesn't work. So I love that you're challenging the norm and saying be different. And being different actually means being healthy, by the way, if you're listening to this. It really does. It means being healthy and vibrant and taking care of yourself and leading from heart. That's being different. And, sign me up for that, team. I think that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, I'll just share, a brief example of like, we walk into a gas station just on a recent road trip with my kids, go use the restroom, and we come out and my son wants to, pick this thing or that thing from the aisle. And I have to take a moment to tell him, hey, 99% of everything in this store is pure poison for your body. Once in a while you want to eat a piece of candy, sure, fine. But 99% of everything you're looking at here is pure poison. And we have to take such intentional action. For example, we realize just through experience of like, going and buying some fruits or vegetables, even on, a trip or a vacation. So you're intentionally putting in healthy food into your body, alongside building in movement. But I love that message of intentionality that you shared with us, Justin, because it does take real intentionality. Otherwise, if we just go by convenience of everything that's just around us all the time, it's not designed for optimal health. A lot of it is just trying to get your eyeballs and interest or, spark your taste buds to get you addicted to things which are not healthy for you at all. And so it does take a lot of ownership, does take a lot of intentionality. And I love that message that you're bringing here.
No, I appreciate that. And the cool part about this too, as you sit back and you think about it, is there's so many great things that each and every one of us is called to. There's so many great things that each and every one of us is set up for. And a lot of what we just are asked to do and what we're required to do is to do something different. We can realize these things if we're willing to be different. And the world's told us that different is wrong, that different stands out, that different is to be made fun of. But in actuality, different is something to be aspired to. Different is something that you can ultimately not create just change in your life, but create change in your family's life, create change in other people's lives. And because you ultimately show them what is possible. You show them what standing out looks like. I go back and I look at my life, and there was not one moment I ever fit in. I was the fat kid that got poked fun of. I was the anorexic kid that got poked fun of. I came down to the States on a hockey scholarship, and I was born and raised in country town of Edmonton, Alberta. So I've got a cowboy belt and a cowboy hat in places where you don't wear cowboy hats and belt buckles. And so I stood out that way. Just the way that I live my life, I stood out. Like all of these things, I always stood out, and all I ever wanted to do was blend in. And now that I'm 36 years old, all I want to do is do everything but blend in. And how can we help people rise up? How can we help people understand that living a life that is different is preparing yourself to live a life that is fulfilled?
And what a disservice it would be if you weren't standing out, you weren't different. Justin, I know we're running short on time, and really appreciate all the energy and conviction and power you've brought. Anything you'd like to close out with, and also how can our listeners get in touch with you? How can they find out what you're doing? Feel free to tell us about that. We'll throw that into the show notes as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Nick. To be honest, guys, I just want you to get access to this book. This book has just been an amazing download for me. I tell this story all the time. I signed my book deal with Wiley about 8 months ago. I had a editorial deadline I had to hit, and 5 days before the deadline, I finished it. The manuscript was done. I was ready to hit submit, and I just woke up in the middle of the night knowing like this was not the book I was supposed to write. And I sat on it for a day. Then I woke up at about 11:45 the next night, and the same feeling in my gut. This is not the book you were supposed to write. Printed it all off, and for the next 50 hours, I was like a mad scientist, just crossing things out and writing new stories and making new notes and putting stickies in certain areas and just reestablishing this whole thing. And I still remember my wife waking up the next morning going, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Don't open a door, don't turn on a fan, don't do anything, because I don't know where any of this is going. Just don't disrupt it." And 4 days later, I had this completely new transcript. And she read both, and she goes, "I don't know where this came from, but this is different." And I was just so excited to get it into people's hands. And so you can grab that at thepowerofownershipbook.com. Thepowerofownershipbook.com is where you can find that. And if you're wanting to get in touch with me or get more access to what it is that we do, you can go to ownitcoaching.com.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well,
Thank you
so
so
much for your time. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're listening, if this is helpful to you or someone you think you might know, it's going to affect their life, their health, their wealth, their happiness, please subscribe, please share this episode, and spread the message. Justin, thanks so much for your time. Nathan as well. And I appreciate you guys' energy, conviction, and love.
So good, guys. I appreciate you.